Hey Creep family, welcome back to my channel. My name is Monica. We are back with another installment of our annual 13 Days of Halloween series. This year we are starting with Pinhead from Hellraiser, so if you'd like to see how I created this look, then please keep on watching. Alright, so we're going to start off with the worst and most tedious part of this whole thing. So we are going to create the pins for Pinhead. Obviously, we do not want to be using real nails or anything like that, as that is going to be completely dangerous. So we're going to opt for these plastic cotton swabs instead. So as you can see here, I'm just taking a small bundle of the swabs and then going in with a pair of scissors or clippers like these. I am then cutting off the cotton tail ends of the swab. So I'm doing it on both sides. I'm going to try to make these as even as possible so there aren't too many crazy varying lengths with the little plastic sticks. So it should look something like this. So basically you're going to do this a million more times and until you get a good amount of the plastic sticks. It's always better to have too much than not enough. I ended up creating way more than I needed, but again, better to do that than not have enough. And then for this part, I managed to talk my lovely boyfriend into helping me out. But basically what we're doing is melting the tail ends of both sides of the plastic sticks. So we're creating kind of that flat head look. So we have an old pan that we're using over a stovetop and we have it on a low heat setting so the plastic doesn't melt too quickly. But we found this worked out really well. So we basically just melted the tail ends by holding it down onto the pan until it created a good amount of flat surface. And then once we were happy with that, we transferred it over to just a regular plate and just kind of pat it on there gently just to cool it down. And it cools really fast, so it didn't take long at all. Once you actually started, it's just with all the pins that we were created, it took a little bit, but so it really helped to have somebody else help with this and save a little bit of time. Now once you have all your pins made, we are going ahead and taking some silver spray paint and spraying them silver. We first started off with just kind of placing them all out as evenly as possible on just like an aluminum sheet of foil, but these things are super lightweight, so when we started spraying them down on this, they moved around really easily. So we ended up kind of transferring it to a pan to try to control where they were going, and that was kind of a little iffy as well. So just keep in mind that spray painting these guys can be a little tricky because they love to jump around the moment you put any pressure on them. So we ultimately sprayed them as best as we could, but then I did still have to go back and kind of hand paint a lot of them to just fill in some spots that didn't get an even coat of the spray paint. Now we are back in my studio and I'm grabbing a styrofoam wig head and we're going to use this to build our bald cap on top of. So grab your head, grab a bald cap, and then we're going to put this just kind of roughly on our head real quick and sketch out where we're going to need to trim down the cap. So go ahead and get your hair in there, and then I'm just using a brow pencil or contour pencil, whatever this is, to just sketch out where I'm going to be cutting off the excess material. So I'm just using a tiny pair of scissors to trim off that stuff I just mapped out. And then once we're done with that, we're going to place this on our little styrofoam head. Just look at him, he's so cute. And then I'm going to take a tape measure, and basically I decided I wanted to go with 1.5 inches between each intersecting line of the squares that are going to be on the head. So going back, if I were to change anything, I would probably do more like 1 1/4 inches. I felt like 1 inch was going to be too close, but I feel like 1.5 inches was just slightly too big, so 1.25 inches would probably be a good amount. So basically, I'm just taking the measuring tape and going through and using this to map out everything as evenly as I can. I'm not being too cautious about being super perfect with these lines. I'm just trying to sketch them on there and follow the curvature of the head. And like I said, make sure everything is basically spaced out as evenly as possible. And then we're going to do the exact same thing with the intersecting lines. And then I'm just grabbing a couple pins and placing this in the temple areas just to keep the bald cap from moving around too much. And I started coloring in the bald cap with a white cream paint. Now, I don't know if it's the type of cream paint I use. It's not one I typically use often, but once it all dried down, it basically just flaked off of the bald cap completely. So I ended up having to go in and relayer it with some other products. So I guess at your own discretion, maybe. I don't know. I didn't use a different kind of cream paint. I just kind of stuck with this one. Didn't work out, so I did have to go in with my water activated face paints, and that worked out a lot better. But use what you got, see what works, and hopefully your situation doesn't flake off completely like mine did, as you can see here. So like I said, I went back in with a water activated face paint and just refilled in a lot of that area that just did not stick for whatever reason. And then once that dries down completely, you can go ahead and flip the bald cap inside out. And as you can see, I already kind of started putting the pins in here, so I'm going to show you how I did that. So basically, once you flip the bald cap inside out, you can see the layout of the sketch that you did before. So again, I'm going to take those small pair of scissors and very carefully, right where each of the lines intersect within those squares, I'm going to just punch a small little hole to fit our pins through. So I'm going in and just finishing off the last 2 rows of pins that I have to still put in here. Once you've got your holes in there, you can then start to poke your pins through there, and again, just do it carefully. Try your best not to rip the bald cap. But those little anchor points, the flat heads on the one side of the pins, is going to help just lock it into the bald cap and keep it from just slipping right out. And then next, we're going to grab some liquid latex. I just put a little bit in a cup here, and using a Q-tip, I'm putting some of that liquid latex around the base of the inside of the cap, and then just pushing the pin down to kind of adhere it to the bald cap itself. Once you do this part, you want to make sure that you're not moving the pins that you put the liquid latex on too much while it's drying down. So I'm just kind of doing a row at a time, and once I got the row done, then I just kind of let it sit for a while until the liquid latex is dry before moving on to the next row. But again, this is just going to anchor it further onto the bald cap and keep it from moving around once we put this on our head. We're then taking some translucent setting powder and just patting this on all over the inside of the bald cap. This is going to take away any stickiness from the liquid latex and keep it from sticking to itself. So once you're done with that, just turn it back outside and put it back on your little styrofoam head. I'm then going back in with that white water activated face paint and just filling in all those areas again that kind of got messed up from us turning this inside out. And then once that white has dried down completely, we're going to go ahead and start putting in our red lines. So you can definitely make the lines thinner like they actually are than how thick I'm doing it, but I was just kind of over it at this point, and so we're just doing this with this kind of thickness. I just kind of followed the thickness of the brush I was using. But I'm just going in with some alcohol activated face paints. So you do, again, need 99% alcohol to do this. So I am going in, dipping it into the alcohol, putting it in the paints, and kind of going between a red and dark red color to start creating the lines for Pinhead's head. Then I'm going in with a brown water activated face paint and just using this to simply darken those red lines a little bit. I was going to use black as well, but I felt that the black was going to be a little too much, so the brown was like a perfect little kind of shadow addition to these lines. So go ahead and do that if you would like. And then we're finally on to putting on this darn thing, so here we go. I am first just brushing out my hair, smoothing it all out, and then putting it into a low ponytail, trying to just slick it back as much as possible. You could also use some like water or gel product in your hair if you would like. I just didn't really want to. I'm then going in and blocking out my brows with an Elmer's glue stick. So I'm coating that on there, using a spoolie to brush the hairs upwards, and then putting about 5 to 6 layers of the glue on my brows, and then letting that dry down completely. We're then going in with a color corrector, and I'm just using a dark peach shade and putting this right over my brows to help conceal them a little bit more. And then on to the darn bald cap. So once we're ready, we're going to put this back onto our head. All the pins were really secure, so it was really kind of nice. I didn't have to worry too much about this when I was putting this on. So just go ahead and adhere this with some Pros-Aid along the edges. Once that's dried down, then I went in and used some Pros-Aid along the edges again on the outside. You can do liquid latex for this as well, but I just prefer Pros-Aid because it's a little less harsh on the skin. Once that has dried down completely, then I'm going in with my white cream paint, and I'm using this on the bald cap where it needs it, obviously on my skin, blending it into the cap, getting that all up in there. Once we're good with all that, we're going to be setting it with some translucent setting powder all over the face. Also, don't forget your ears. Make sure you get those white as well. I'm then going in with the Jeffree Star Blue Blood palette and using this kind of grayish blue shade and this baby blue shade. And I'm basically going to start with the lighter blue and using this to kind of create a blown out kind of smoky effect on the outside of the eye. I also decided to start throwing some of this blue in the center of the squares just to give it a little bit of dimension. We're then going to go in with that gray blue and start putting this closer into the creases and under the lash line, giving it more depth and dimension in the eye socket area. I'm also making sure to bring this kind of in the inner corner to create even more depth and recession in there as well. I'm then taking a combination of both of those eyeshadows and using it to contour my cheekbones and also placing it on the underneath tip of my nose. We're then going to grab our alcohol activated paints, and I'm again going in with these two red shades, mixing them together, and then using that 99% alcohol to activate it. We're going to be using this to finish off drawing the rest of the lines onto the face. So basically, going in with my little paintbrush again, I'm just going to follow the lines that we had already created on the bald cap, at least with the vertical one, and just connect those going down. And then as far as the ones going horizontal on the face, I'm kind of just doing a little bit more of that like 1.25 inch that we were talking about earlier, so it's not quite as big as the ones on the cap, which I ended up preferring. So again, just kind of going in, sketching in my lines there, cleaning them up as needed. And again, once that's all dried down, then we're going in with our brown face paint and using this to deepen the lines a little bit more. I'm then going in with my Pros-Aid, putting a little bit on the Q-tip and just kind of dotting it on the intersecting points of these squares. And this is going to be what anchors our pins onto the face. So again, this is going to be a little bit more of a tedious thing that's going to take a little bit of time, so just be patient with it. I kind of liked to put the little bit of Pros-Aid down on my skin beforehand, so it allowed it some time to get tacky. Obviously I placed a little bit as well onto the pins, so it had some extra hold, but you are going to have to hold these in place until they dry down. And just do that all over the rest of the face. When you're done, it should look something like this. I then went in and grabbed some black eyeshadow, and I'm putting this right under my lash line on the bottom, as well as along my lash line on the top of the lid as well, just to give it some more depth and definition, make it pop a little bit more. I then went in and popped in my contacts, which I will list the link down below as to where I got them. I'm then just putting a light coat of mascara on my top lashes only, and then going back in with that light blue eyeshadow and placing this in the center of the rest of the squares on my face. And that is it, you guys. You are now Pinhead from Hellraiser. I hope you enjoyed this first look of 13 this year for our 13 Days of Halloween series. As always, I appreciate and love you guys so much. Thank you for always supporting me and everything that I do. You guys are honestly the best. So stick around, hit that subscribe button if you have not already, follow and like and comment, all that good stuff, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Mwah!